Welcome to the second part of the Peau de Chagrin podcast. We are joined by John Marchant, gallerist, John Marchant Gallery, and the founders of Peau de Chagrin, Sophie Guerrero and Mess Chiller. And I'm Lucy Tesco.
In the orgy, time is discussed by the two courtesans.
Aquiline and Euphrasie.
Exactly, Aquilina and Euphrasie. And they have a long sequence talking about time and how they're going to enjoy the present, whatever it is, because for them time is ticking and they have no future.
Does not Rafaels say that when he's thinking about taking the Chagrin? Does he not say then? He says, a short life but a merry one.
He does.
He does.
You're right.
But he doesn't live like that.
No, he doesn't.
No.
He's miserable.
He's
short,
miserable.
Incredibly miserable.
It's so miserable.
And the two figures, the two courtesans who are, in a way, they know what their life will be. They have to enjoy the present because they will end up in the almshouse. They know that they have no other way of living other than living their life in the present and enjoying themselves as much as possible. And there will be consequences, but there is no alternative.
But they embrace the consequences.
I mean, it's enlightened and incredibly cynical at the same time, to think there's no hope left in many respects because I have resigned myself to this particular type of ending, so I'm just going to live it out until I end up there. As opposed to, I think, some people, Raphael being one of them, who are chasing this renown in the hope that they might end up in a chateau as a great writer, perhaps, rather than someone who might think, I'm not special, so I'm going to live a particularly special life.
This is Balzac again, right?
Exactly.
And then his character will eke out his life for as long as he can, even though it is miserable, or far more miserable than people who are far less fortunate than him.
I'm not sure the courtesans are less fortunate than him. They've chosen in the face of reality. They just...
No, but I mean, he has all this wealth and power, and he can't enjoy any of it, and he extends his life and is miserable. They do not have those benefits. They will live life and enjoy it and embrace it and suffer those consequences. He does not want to be accountable.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't in any element, I think, and this is something I found, it comes back to how we were saying, you start the book and it's very hard to shake. I find Raphael never shakes that deflated, sort of pitiful fool of a character. And in everything, he's not accountable. He is this limp, pathetic man.
So is Pauline his salvation?
I don't know. She could have been, and I think he fails at that too.
He fails. And I think that's where I don't think that Pauline is such a wet blanket, because in a way she understands what life is, and she chooses either to love him selflessly, in brackets, or for the pleasure of loving him.
But I found that the even kind of stranger bit was the epilogue afterwards.
Yes, that is very strange, isn't it?
Very, very strange.
Yeah, I love that. I love the epilogue.
Who is Pauline?
I know, this kind of great...
And
Pauline... Ghostly apparition rising out like the sun.
Yeah, and that final sentence that we hark back, she's a palm reader. It's the one other kind of fantastical element.
Yeah.
There's the chagrin, which is the death of him in everything it embodies, and Pauline, who we all believe is the life of him, and yet all along she was the death of him too.
Yeah, it's a curious epilogue, isn't it?
Very, very strange.
I loved it.
Me too.
Actually, I was fascinated.
It was almost like a song with its chorus. Who is Pauline?
Who is
What
Pauline?
happened to Pauline?
Yeah.
She's far more interesting.
Yeah.
Suddenly, in the epilogue.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that
Like a shimmering
wonderful
goddess of the sun or something, isn't she? It's
that final scene, I think, suddenly sheds them both. I felt in completely different lights. That is Raphael's moment. It couldn't come too soon.
Something which we haven't discussed actually when we were talking about time earlier on is the recurrence of certain characters through different books in
Yes.
comedy. Right? You know, Rastignac is
Rastignac is
the,
in
the doctor as well, isn't there? There's a doctor that comes up in a number of novels.
Briançon.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So what does that?
Well, I can't remember for Briançon, but for Rastignac is an epitome of the arriviste,
Right.
the opportunist, the man who knows how to play the game in society. And Balzac was obsessed also with recognition. He was. He wanted recognition, and in that way he wasn't pitiful as a Raphael, because he achieved recognition.
Well, it's something that Lucy says, you know, Balzac adds the de to his name. Because he wants that status in society in the same way as Raphael does.
But Rastignac, it comes back. I don't think this book is part of La Comédie Humaine. Most of Balzac's book are held in a how do you say headline that is called La Comédie Humaine, and that's why perhaps the political context is not so strong yet. I think it's interwoven in a very subtle way. It's always interwoven, and that book is set in a very disillusioned time. And Balzac is interested in people, in characters.
Well, it's this thing where...
And he keeps Rastignac is in a lot of his books as...
Does he develop as a character? Is there a kind of linear development through the novels, or is...
Balzac, in his concern to analyse people and characters, the recurrence of people is more just the recurrence of personality in life, and
it's philosophical.
Absolutely,
I really think it's philosophical. He's concerned with existentialism.
In the way that we kept mentioning the sort of historical context of his novels, and for me, it's these universal qualities that transcend the particular time in which he's writing. So this story resonates powerfully today because there are these universal qualities that aren't necessarily... It's about human nature, it's not about the politics. So they will always be relevant, because those qualities or lack of qualities in man will be as relevant today as they were 100 years ago, and they will be in 100 years' time if we're still around.
Just as you said earlier, John, about that desire to place oneself within society, then is just exactly the same now. Desire to elevate oneself to celebrity status. It's the same concerns, really, and they are so... It's almost coming back to time. The book transcends time because all these central themes are eternal, completely and absolutely. But it is pure philosophy, the book. It's incredibly Aristotelian, actually, and I found that the constant struggle between leading a life of knowledge and wisdom versus leading a life of enjoyment or act, or Aristotle calls it a life of politics, but using the term quite loosely, it's uncanny how much he's taken. One would read from the Nicomachean Ethics, that is exactly what's posed there. So this is a kind of conversation, a discussion that's been going on for thousands of years. It's almost spooky, kind of, his awareness of these issues and the bird's eye view he takes of humanity. And reading the eventually removed preface, his concern is with critics penalising writers for being able to put themselves in the skin of their characters and present these thought patterns or these lives. And that is something that still is pertinent today, and that critics are still, it's always a discussion, whether it's in cinema, whether it's in literature, television. What are the boundaries? Who are these people who are able to transcend their own morals and their own virtues and put themselves in the position to create these...
Despite their experience.
Despite their experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Didn't Balzac write, under a pseudonym, reviews of this book?
I believe he did.
It's a bit cheeky, right?
Well, he wanted to be recognised.
He desperately did. You know, actually, there's one tiny thing that I wanted to say earlier on. I didn't quite get the opportunity. The fact that this is a self-portrait is so one particular line is great because as Raphael is dying, Balzac actually says, at his end, his genius was revealed.
Well, of course.
Thank God.
I love that. It was great. That's me. That's me.
I love the fact that you love the epilogue.
Yeah, I really did love the epilogue.
That's why I love Pauline. In a way, I think she's a Virgoan character. She's like a priestess.
Certainly.
She's totally autonomous. That's why she can. I don't think her love. Well, okay, her love is selfless. It's the act of loving that's enough for her. And in that way, do you think she really needs Raphael to love her back?
In the way of perhaps the recurring characters of the shop owner and the courtesan, Pauline is always alone. In her interaction with Raphael, it's completely cut off from everything else that's going on, and she is, all the more makes that epilogue so intriguing, is who is Pauline? Is she even real? Does she just embody desire in its purity? For Raphael, is she that glowing light that he ends up devouring and ultimately switching his light out?
And if you compare it to Balzac's life, and actually him meeting his Pauline, what do you think?
His Pauline was whom? Can you tell us about her?
She's a Polish courtesan, but she was married to a nobleman, and this very book, once it was published, he received an anonymous letter, which turned out to be from Evelina, critiquing his depiction of women.
Well, of course.
As of course, as any small woman would probably. And she came into his life, and then for the next, 20 years,
yeah.
I think they spent 5 years writing to one another, and then the last 15 years of his life they had this long affair where they would go 3 years sometimes without seeing each other, and then they'd spend years travelling together. And she was his Pauline, because she matched him on the level of seeing through him. And it's funny that she came after this book. It's almost like he magicked her into existence.
So I believe there was a template, as it were, for Fedora as well, wasn't there?
Yes.
Olympe
Yes.
So
who was she?
She was his 45-year-old girlfriend when
Exactly.
he was 20 or something like that. She was a courtesan as well.
Exactly.
So what about the character of Fedora in the book? What does she represent here?
Well, this
What's
one's
she like?
interesting.
I love her.
I think as a woman, she is one of the best characters. She is, got 10 times Raphael's strength and core, and she knows who she is. She knows what she wants.
And she knows society also.
She's unapologetic.
And she is accountable.
Yes.
She's an arriviste also. She's married and she's fighting for her title that is not recognized back home. She's recognized as a countess. Is she a countess? In France. But actually back home she's not really recognized, and she's fighting for that.
Which makes it all the more fitting, I suppose, that Raphael should desire her in such a consuming manner, because she is everything
that he's not.
He is not, and everything I think he concerns himself with being, but will never come naturally to him.
The unattainable.
Absolutely.
The unattainable again.